Well, they should be able to understand it without much difficulty, particularly the first half, which is the story of a kitchen maid in a Caucasian city that has gone through a revolution, as in a civil war, and she saves a baby in the streets who turns out to be the baby of the governor that was just left, and she goes through the Caucasian mountains trying to protect the child, and really devotes all her energies to protecting the child, and with a lot of sacrifice and a lot of damage to her own happiness. And the first half of the play shows that action. And it's very exciting. It's not difficult to follow at all. But then something remarkable happens. It again is truly remarkable. The second part begins, and we go back to the start. But instead of looking at Grusha the maid, we come across this strange figure called Azdak, who is one of the most fascinating figures in world literature. He is rather Falstaffian in some ways. He is totally corrupt. He has no moral basis at all. He is an outcast. He is filthy. But by certain other circumstances, he becomes the Chief Justice of the revolutionary state. And he goes around making all these judgments that actually initially we think are very corrupt judgments, but actually it becomes clear that there's a real truth in what he does, and there's actually a purity. And then at the end, the two stories come together of the judge and Grusha, and he is the judge who decides who is the proper mother for the child. And what you need to know is that there are two stories, and people might find it a little bit disorienting when you get to the second half, because the tone changes. The first half is quite melodramatic, and it's full of exciting incidents, and everybody really sort of feels for Grusha. And then the second half is loud, it's satirical. It attacks in particular, it has some wonderful satire on the law and some very sort of canny satire on politics as well. So there is a sort of a legal, political dimension to Act 4, and then the two come together at the end. And you have a very interesting perspective at the end, because suddenly Grusha, this wonderful young girl, or sort of young woman, suddenly she begins to seem a political ideal as well, which is something you would never imagine you would see at the beginning of the play.